Hey, welcome to Weld.com, home of TIG time. Hi, I'm Mr. TIG, and we're going to follow up with the two-part series, and this is in stick welding. Now, the first part, you saw Bob Moffett, the instructor of welding at Cali County College, doing the uphill process. Pretty difficult as far as I'm concerned, but he made it look easy. So part two, we're going to go ahead and ask him to show us the downhill. So he's going to stick weld everything downhill. So just want to share that with you. We're getting into some pipeline type industry, and I'm going to ask him a few questions about this pipe and the thickness and the welding process, because one of the welding processes that we don't cover enough of is we do cover TIG, but we don't cover the stick welding process. So there's a lot of cases where we'll do a root pass with TIG and then we'll fill it with something else. Now, this particular test is set up under an ASME code. So, Bob, I want to ask you, first of all, what is this pipe? What's the diameter? What's the thickness?
It's an 8-inch standard wall thickness, or what we call Schedule 40.
Okay.
So we're a little over 5/16. We're in between 5/16 and 3/8 on the wall thickness.
All right. And I notice you've got it set up here with a certain prep, a certain gap. What is that?
We're using the shielded metal arc welding or stick welding process today. The times that we've done these other sessions, we've done the gas tungsten or the TIG route, and we had a real big wide gap so that we could fit our filler wire to the inside of the pipe to get our fusion and our root reinforcement. You'll notice this barely has any gap in it. I like to fit my pipe when I'm doing the stick welding with like a saw blade, 3/32 or less, because this has such a violent digging type of arc. This is E6010, 6010, 7010, 8010, depending on the alloy of the pipe. So this violent digging type of arc that we have, we consider this a fast freeze electrode. I'm able to create the arc. It actually blows a keyhole around the end of the rod, and I can force this in here and just fly downhill, and it's fusing the inside.
Okay, so what ASME code are we going to be using here?
We're actually going to do two demonstrations here. One of them is would fit to API 1104, American Petroleum Institute 1104, cross-country transmission of hydrocarbons. Everything's downhill. Downhill root, downhill hot pass, fill, cap, everything.
Okay, and why is that?
Speed. That's just what's done.
Okay.
Mainly it's speed.
Okay, so what industries will use this?
Oil and gas predominantly, water. I've done a lot of stuff that, we're creating the pipeline, we're running it cross country. I don't know what goes in it. It's either oil and gas or it's water.
Okay. All right. So you're going to do downhill, and you're going to do a root pass. How many passes will you do total?
On this particular wall thickness, I will run an 1/8-inch root. I will do a 1/8-inch fill or a hot pass. Little technique on that, and I'll probably switch to a 5/32, next size bigger rod. And I'll do a fill and a cap with 5/32.
Okay, so all the rod's going to be the same type of rod, just different diameters?
E6010, just different diameter.
Well, okay, let's get our gear on, and I'd like to watch you do this, because I've never done this type of test before.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Okay, so you've got your root pass you're going to put in right now. Mm-hmm. And what's the diameter of filler?
I have an 1/8-inch 6010. My pipe is already pre-tacked up here at the top and the bottom, and I have one over here on this side. I've left this one open because I just don't want to grind it. I don't need to. Okay. Normally, if I had my 4 fit-up tacks in here, I would feather the starts and the stops. Okay, but I'm just going to start up here on top of this tack, and I'm going to fall down over the top of this keyhole, reestablish, and just fly down through here. What you're gonna see while you're watching is you're gonna see a keyhole being blown out around this rod. It's gonna open up a hole, kind of like this one here, and then it's gonna fill in on top of it as I'm progressing downhill. It's gonna look like a little V dancing around on top of this rod.
Okay.
Okay. The hot pass is a completely different technique. We'll get to that here in just a minute. The fill pass, I'm gonna slow down a little bit. We want to bring this up to about a 30-second or so, flush with the beveled edges. Leave the beveled edges there because I need those as a guide. So when I put my cap in there, I want to be up on top of the pipe and have my allowable reinforcement. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. My rod angle, when I'm progressing downhill, I like to run this with, again, I'm running a tight gap. I can run a fairly higher amperage. I like to point this, here's the center of the pipe, but I like to be in here about 15, 20, 30 degrees, depending on what's happening with the root.
Okay.
I may have to change my angle to make this jump to both sides, or if it's tried to come over to my side, I may have to angle it over here and reestablish. I want this to be running nice and even down through here. There's times when everything is really good, you can strike an arc and be welding along here and you can hear it, you can feel it. You can raise your hood and just drink coffee. You don't need to watch it. It's going in there. It's that cool. Okay, ready?
All right.
Here we go. Now, if you're looking on the inside of the pipe, you should see a pretty good flame going on in there. This is actually going in pretty nice. Don't have to fight it too much. I'm not having to move around. If you look at this from the top, there's a keyhole around the end of my rod. If I've come to the end of my rod, now when I restart, I'm always going to start up on my bead and move down here into that keyhole. I can't start and reestablish that, otherwise I'll leave a void on the inside of the pipe.
Well, you got to see the penetration from this side.
And that's the root pass. It looks a little rough because of my starts and stops. I'm going to come in here with a grinder, a thin-bladed grinder, and I'm going to knock these down where I started and stopped, and make it clean. But what I don't like doing is grinding all the way down to pure white metal. I don't think there's a need for it when you're welding with 6010. That's why we run a hot pass. We increase our amperage, and we use a technique where we lift the arc a little bit, and the increased voltage helps blow this stuff. The hot pass is just digging the slag out that's left behind on either side of the root.
Okay.
They're called wagon tracks. You'll see them in x-rays. That's how they're described. So we'll get those out of there, and we'll actually put the next pass in, get rid of that, and then we'll start bringing this up in clean weld metal.
Okay, Bob, I saw that from the inside here, I was watching most of the way. It looked like it was penetrating just fine. And I know that you had to move it and grind it and put it back here, but I notice it's got a little bit of roughness right here. What do you do with that?
Okay. You know, in our TIG welding, it's all clean. There's no slag. There's nothing left behind. And
Yeah.
you know, you see the pattern with the TIG weld, and it looks beautiful. With stick welding, you know, you get this ripple pattern, but you also have this slag that's produced from the flux on the rod. You know, as I ground this out, you'll see that I've left behind some slag on the sides of the bead, and some of these are kind of laying up here, and it looks a little rough.
Yeah.
That's fine by me, because I know I can blow this out of here. That's what I'm going to do here is run a hot pass, and that's what the hot pass is for.
Okay.
Is to get rid of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to run this hot pass, and I'm going to get these slag inclusions that are on either side of the root with the technique of dragging this down and lifting it up. And just a little stitch, rocking motion and a stitch. And that's going to get rid of all that stuff. The appearance of this bead that I run, I should be able to take the wire wheel and just buff it, not do any more grinding. The only grinding that I would do is on a high bump where I left my start.
Okay.
Okay. So I ran this route about 75, 80 amps. Okay. And now I'm up to 95, 100 amps. So this is going to run pretty hot.
Okay.
And again, because I want to dig that stuff out of there. So.
All right. Okay, Bob, I see you put your second pass in, and it looks like it wetted out a lot nicer. It's now getting cleaner as it seems to come up. What's the next step?
Okay, the next step, I've turned my amperage back down to about 80 amps.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead. I'm a little bit in between here. I do like to run the 532, but I'm going to go ahead for demonstration purposes and run this with 8th.
Okay.
So I want to slow down a little bit. You'll notice that this is kind of flat, a little bit of concave, and that's the nature of a hot pass. So I'm going to fill this up to about a 32nd. Again, this rod doesn't like to fill a lot. It's a digging type of rod. When I get down here past 3 o'clock over here on the side of the pipe, I may have to fill this a couple of times to bring it up where I want.
Okay, so
Just the nature of being overhead, it just doesn't fill up enough.
Okay, so if you get it in 3 passes, fine. If not, you evaluate it and you come back and do some additional passes then.
Sure.
Okay.
Usually with 6010 rods on this wall thickness and this diameter, I'd treat it as a 4-pass weld. And some guys will go with either bigger rods. You know, kind of depends on what's happening here with the position and how much you're filling on every pass.
But in every case, are you still using the same electrode type?
60-10.
60-10, okay.
Light, I'm using a technique here. It's a little semicircle, just kind of watching that top edge, and where it solidifies is how full I am, and I'm gauging that off each side of the bevel so I can try to get consistent fill. And I'm getting down here in the side of the pipe where I'm going to have to reposition myself. Bottom quarter down here where I'm at now, this is where it gets kind of tricky to get the amount of fill that you want. If you're carrying too much metal, the slag tends to try to run down in front of your rod. It's not a good condition. You use a couple of techniques here with a tight stitch or a whip. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So, you know, the top of the bead is pretty much flush with the pipe, but I still have these two very minute edges on each side. I don't have a lot of slag trapped on either side of that bead.
Okay.
It's the nature of the rod, one, and there's a little technique involved. You'll find guys that weld pipe have a lot of the different techniques and the whips and the stuff going on. They run small circles very fast on their cap. Some of them will come up here and tuck on the sides. Anything to get, you know, to fuse these sidewalls and leave the proper amount of reinforcement.
Okay, so are you going to do a cap pass?
This is my cap pass.
Okay.
This is the last pass. I'll run 2 rods of the cap just for demonstrative purposes.
Okay.
I've opted to start out here. I'm just going to do a straight back and forth weave so I can show you this bead shape here. You kind of appreciate how this is getting filled up. You see the edges over here, and you also see a line about a quarter of an inch back away from the rod, and that's where the weld tool is solidifying. So if I keep this motion consistent and I keep that shape the same, looks like my fingernail. If I keep that all the same, then my bead should be straight and the same height. It always stacks up a little taller up here on the top of the pipe. That's fine. And we have a completed weld. We're up above. We're not horribly tall or anything. A little taller here than I am over here on the side. That's just the nature of how it falls in there with gravity. Kept my width fairly consistent.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think it looks great.
We actually slowed down and did this. You know, normally when we're in the field, again, you're in position or you're either down underground or you're doing this above ground. We're going a lot faster. That's why we'll get a little tighter fit, run the high amperage, a lot of rod pressure, get the hot pass in. We'll switch to a larger diameter rod and do the fill pass in the cap. This is going. It's quick.
Okay. Well, we're going to get a close-up shot inside of the penetration, and I was watching him while he was doing the root pass, and it was coming through really strong. As he added fill passes to it, I could see that it was just a cherry red. There were no sparks at that point. Now, Bob, can we go through this one more time, just as a recap? There is a certification for this, and you said there is, and what was the name of it?
The API 1104 is what we just demonstrated, or this would relate to API 1104.
Okay.
Piping for cross-country transmission of hydrocarbons, tanks, anything connection to a tank. The codes are all applicable to this. This is the type of procedure that we weld to that code. Okay, so we had a fairly tight fit. We did a downhill root pass. We did a downhill hot pass to blow out any of our impurities. We did a fill pass. We kept everything clean on the way out, and we did a cap.
Okay.
About the only thing that you're really going to have happen with this is incomplete penetration on the root side, trapped slag. Those are about the only two things that are undercut up here on the top. Those are the three major things that could go wrong with this.
Well, folks, we're doing this at Cali County College in Arkansas City, and I want to thank Bob especially for taking time out to do this with us. All educational. If you need any information, you can contact the college, but I want to thank you for watching TIG Time. I'm Mr. TIG.